Hello. So we have
Hey, what's up?
the SoapGirls on, right? this is
Yeah.
this is Fan Electric Ghost, and I interview indie artists from around the world. And today we're talking to the French sisters, the SoapGirls, right? You're Millie and Mie, or do I have that right?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Actually, we're born in France and we grew up in Cape Town, South Africa. So we have, um, how could you say, like mixed
Background.
way of saying the name. You can either call us Millie and Me or Camille and Noemi,
Oh, okay.
depending on what language you speak.
Okay. Well, I went with my American version. Sorry.
No.
But yeah, so you've been performing internationally since 2015, right? And you've got like a
Yeah.
global following. You're on the festival circuit right now with your new tour that you're calling what you're calling it. Uh,
Sniff My
yeah,
Strap
yeah,
tour.
yes. So that's
Yeah.
really cool, and I really appreciate your sound because I love like a punk aesthetic, and you kind of remind me of like Joan Jett and Lita Ford in the Runaways. And
Oh, that's so cool, dude. Thank you. That's a very big compliment. We fucking look up to those women so much.
yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
you're channeling their vibe like a modern version, and that's really cool because I love punk music like Husker Du and the Replacements and go back to the Sex Pistols and Susie and the Banshee. I just have a love for that kind of music, and you guys are in this world where there's a lot of EDM. Not that put it down, and I'm an electronic music musician myself, but I like it when people actually strap on a guitar and really get into it, and you guys are really out there.
Oh, thank you.
So
Really appreciate them.
yeah, so I mean, you've been performing. You performed at the Rebellion Festival, Camden Rocks. You got the Sniff My Strap album, and you're getting ready to put out your new album, Elephant in the Room, right?
Yeah, our first album was Calls for Rebellion, our first independent album, and then we've got Society's Rejects, and then the third album is Elephants in the Room. We're about to release that.
Yeah, I like that song you have that kind of name checks Johnny Rotten.
Oh yeah, that's actually about a serial killer in South Africa. We fucking love John Lydon,
Yeah,
but that one, yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
about
You
a
kind of
serial.
flipped it. Yeah, you flipped it. It's not exactly about him.
No, but we do. We really dig him. We think he's an intelligent man.
That's cool. So I mean, your sound is really dynamic. I really and in your stage show, like I'm very impressed with what you're doing because like a lot of people, their stagecraft, they don't like. It seems like you guys are looking up to the ideas like the Bowie, Freddie Mercury, and then people like the Runaways, but having a stagecraft that you got, that your look and the feel of what you do, that you're bringing like a real show, from what
Yeah,
I
well,
see.
thank you.
To us,
So
that's like it's super important because you can't just, I mean, obviously music is very important too, but you need like to take people somewhere else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't
yeah,
you
yeah,
can't just assume that just because you're playing an instrument, I mean, that people are going to be entertained. It's great and all, like to have great songs, but you need to make the show, so to speak, and that's what we
yeah.
love doing.
Yeah. You kind of bring in that Freddie Mercury Bowie vibe, because you're
Oh, that's
bringing.
very cool.
Yeah. Well, because I'm a big lover of music. I'm a producer and musician myself, and I've always looked toward folks like that. If you go back in the day with Bowie, he reinvented himself. He kind of self-actualized and created Ziggy and became Ziggy. And you guys seem to be channeling this kind of vibe that is kind of really old school but cool. It's modern too because you're willing to just put yourselves out there and be very expressive, and that's really cool. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. And
oh,
I think those people like Freddie Mercury and David Bowie, if you look back, they got a lot of shit back then
yeah,
because they were ahead of the time. But even us, you would think in 2019, people are more open-minded in a sense, yes.
it's
So
crazy that we're still having to fight for the right to do what we as artists feel is right for us. It's crazy in this day and age, but it's happening, and
but it means you're doing something right, I guess. Yeah.
we're really happy to inspire other people to carry on regardless of the shit that they get for it.
Yeah, I would think in America you might have some trouble with some venues with the way you do your show because you're out there, and you're being really honest and you're presenting yourselves. And some people in my country are kind of like stuck up and prudish, and they might not like what you're doing. I would think like in LA and New York you wouldn't have trouble, but you get out to the Midwest, you get out to certain places, they might not like it, but who cares?
Oh my God. Sometimes there's a nice fight at our shows. And I mean, like, look, I don't mind swinging my bass and knocking a few people in the head. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's a good
gotta do what you do.
But so you've been like I think like if you get into what you're doing, it's very exciting, and it looks like you guys started like from your story. You were selling like handmade soap when you were like 8, 9 years old, right? And that's how you became like the SoapGirls. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah. We actually started out street performing. We wanted to raise funds for charity, and we've always loved like entertaining people. So we were like, well, you know what? Why don't we just I don't know,
take some of these soaps and go down to the harbor and, I don't know, put on a little show and see what happens.
Yeah, so we would go onto tourist buses and sing in like different languages, and we'd entertain people, and we'd raise funds for hospitals in South Africa. The public ones are amazing, but because of a lack of resources and like mismanagement of funds, some have broken down equipment. So we were really happy that at that age we had a sense of purpose.
But even like back then, I think it was cool that we did that because it set us up to have a very thick skin now. It's even like people gave us a lot of shit because of what we were doing, even though it was for a good cause. Like people like, oh no, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be, I don't know, going out and, I don't know, kissing boys or some other shit.
Some bullshit, yeah. So we're happy that gave us grounding. We did that 365 days a year for 8 years. And
obviously after school.
Yeah, from doing that, actually, we met someone who asked us, well, do you want to like have a go in my studio and try to record a song and see like what it's like? And we're like, okay, why not? So we were about 12 and 13, and we went in and recorded some really cheesy songs, and this one in particular was called Boys, Boys, Boys. And we sent it out, and it got onto a Japanese compilation disc. And eventually, after quite a few years of just like trying like different songs and stuff in studios, we got signed to Universal Records in South Africa, and it was pretty cool. But the only thing was they had a very different idea of how they wanted us to be and sound. So we had a constant struggle, a constant struggle for creative freedom.
So are you still with Universal, or did you switch because of that struggle?
We do for the last since 2013 we've been independent, and it took us years to get out of that contract.
I doubt very much we'd be allowed to say and do the things we do if we were with them.
Yeah. It was a very, very horrible look. There's nothing wrong with record labels per se, but when they don't understand an artist and they try to
change them like all the time,
it's shit, man.
Yeah, that's why I'm on an indie label. I just have a distribution deal, and they pretty much let me do whatever I want because that's the way.
That's a lot better.
Yeah, because I'm not like hitting real big, but I'm doing what I want. They don't edit my material. Exactly. They just take it and engineer it, and then they put it out like Bentley Records out in New York. But like I was reading your influences, and you're very wide influences because you're talking about like Fleetwood Mac, Joan Jett, Heart, Nirvana, Butthole Surfers, REM. So, Alice in Chains, Marilyn Manson, Alanis Morissette, Napalm Death, L7. I mean, you've got very wide, like the Runaways too, So
yeah, you can see it in our music. It's definitely reflected because we have a lot of very melodic songs, and then we've got songs that are pretty, I don't know, apparently they're quite scary live.
Yeah, like L7, you got the L7 vibe big time, and you got that Butthole Surfer kind of real punk kind of.
And Rock On, we fucking love, we love all those bands. And I think it's great that we're yin and yang as personalities and music-wise. So my sister loves Fleetwood Mac. She loves very melodic music. Mm-hmm. And then I prefer the maybe more aggressive music, you would say.
Yeah.
and it's a good mix.
Yeah, it's cool. So you like, no problem. Sometimes it drops. I mean, you gotta be careful to make sure you don't hit the button. But there's a little button on the bottom, so you just be careful. But
yeah, you know what it is? I think it's the Wi-Fi, because even though we've got our own like little mobile Wi-Fi box just to be safe,
and the connection drops because it's like in the middle of nowhere.
Well, we are right now, so it's pretty shit.
Well, just be aware it's not live, and we can string segments together, so it'll be cool. So
okay.
So what I was talking about, like, you guys play bass and guitar, right? You actually are musicians. So who plays bass and who plays guitar?
Millie on the bass
and me on guitar.
So when did you learn how to play bass and guitar? What age did you start getting into that?
12 and 13 when we picked up guitars, and that was because we heard the song White Wedding by Billy Idol.
And we were like,
oh, awesome.
And thank you. That's a fucking amazing song. And I think it's Steve Stevens who's the guitarist, and they're fucking amazing.
Yeah, Steve Stevens, he's awesome.
It's like insane. And then bass I picked up about 7 or 8 years. Yeah, 7 years ago, because I always struggled to sing and play guitar at the same time for some very weird reason, and it just didn't feel right. And we needed a bassist, so I'm like, you know what, fuck this. And then I just picked up the bass, and it felt as natural as breathing. So
yeah, because sometimes, like, you know, you never know. Some folks, like, you know, they can pick up an instrument and they feel more comfortable with it. So yeah, it's like my brother was able to pick up guitar and he just jumped into it, but I was able to jump on piano and synths, and, you know, he couldn't do it. He wanted to do piano, but he couldn't. But he was more comfortable on guitar. So yeah, it's like you never know, like, how your body reacts to instruments, you know, and certain folks are going to be more comfortable with another instrument than other ones. But that's cool.
Yeah.
So
you get it like with something.
So you've been recording in like studios, or do you have your own home studio?
No, we not yet. We don't have our own home studio.
We've got our own, like, we usually make a grunge music room wherever we go. But
and the neighbors go apeshit.
Yeah, but fuck them. We work in different studios and stuff, especially in South Africa, and eventually that's our goal, to have our own home studio.
That's cool. So when you guys put demos down, do you like do any kind of demo like at home with like a 4-tracker or something, or you just wait till you get to the studio?
Yeah, sometimes we do, but we generally, like, we'll go straight into the studio with whatever's in our head and just do it. We have done like some like rough demos, but then it's funny because the song will just change so much, like after a week of us sitting with it.
Yeah, that seems to be like, I used to play with bands, and, you know, because I'm a keyboardist, I was able to like arrange a lot of the parts. But then when I would get, you know, to my rehearsal section, like the bass player would take the bass line I wrote and I'd totally rewrite it. The drummer would take like my electronic drums and totally rewrite it. But yeah, I give them the kind of idea of what I wanted. And when you get together with like, instead of like using a DAW, you get really dynamic changes, which I think. So you guys are kind of like old school. You go to the studio like bands like Fleetwood Mac used to, and you kind of use the studio to create the song.
Yeah, well, what happens is like we'll play, and I mean, we'll just get like ideas, and we hear melodies already in the guitar parts.
We just use the studio to like track what we want to do.
Yeah.
Like we do.
Yeah, so you're not doing what the people do today with all the, you know, Ableton Live and all that. Everybody's like constructing these kind of, to me, they're too tight and anesthetic, and they don't have like a live feel like what I hear you guys doing.
Hey, well, thank you. It is tricky though. Even we find with recording, often we're very like, we love raw recordings and things, but sometimes in the studio you don't get that same like energy, and people often will say to us, you sound way better live, and I take that as a compliment. But it is tricky in this day and age to like get a sound engineer that will just let you
be what you want.
Yeah, because we don't let anyone interfere with like how we want things to sound and our ideas.
But when
so a home studio might be a really good idea for you guys, because then you could probably like, you know, get some equipment and just like live track it to get that feel. Because like, you know, like if you think about bands like, you know, the Sex Pistols or Husker Du or the Who, you know, they always sound really good live. You know, and it might be a good idea in the future to like live record an album.
Oh no, that's like, what we're gonna do. I think we might even do a live album this year itself, actually. Because I don't know, there's something about the energy on stage, and I mean, when you're all playing together, like we're a 3-piece band, and you have such a synergy, and it's tangible. You can feel it through like any recording. But in the studio, sometimes because we're not all playing together at the same time, like my sister and I are together, but the drummer only adds on like way later. It's different.
Yeah, that's always the problem with a studio recording. Is, you know, the recording engineers always, you know, they try to fix things that maybe they shouldn't fix.
Oh, no, we're louder than that. We're like, no, fuck you, man. Like when it gets like, sometimes it's maybe too clean for what we wanted, but in the studio we produce everything ourselves. It's just whatever idea we've got enough, it's there.
Yeah, because if you think about like a band like Husker Du, when they were on the label called SST, you know, they're like, you know, those albums, like, you know, like had a feel that was really raw, because when they were recorded, they kind of pretty much live recorded the whole band playing at the same time. And then when they went to Warner Brothers, they had the Warner Brothers guys that tried to clean it up. And then, you know, the Warner Brothers Husker Du albums they sound like, you know, radio quality, so-called radio quality, but they don't have as much of the punk aesthetic that the early records had.
There's something amazing about it. It's the same with Photoshop. It's an amazing tool, I mean, when you need it, but when you take a face or you take people and they become so unrecognizable, and
they lose their character.
It's insane. And it's the same with music, I guess, when it's too polished.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people are trying to get, you know, back to analog tape and using like, you know, like analog recording equipment rather than digital. Because I use Moogs, I use analog synths, you know, and a lot of people use plugins. I'm an electronic guy, but I like using like Prophets, and, you know, analog synths have a character that's kind of like a punk aesthetic. They're not like digital synths don't have that.
Yeah.
And so when you're playing like the kind of music I'm playing, I like to use the analog because it has that raw, powerful sound that, you know, it's not a guitar, but a Moog can be very expressive compared to like a digital synth.
No,
and if you record it, it's better to record it onto tape than to record it digitally, because you lose a lot of the character.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing with like raw guitar playing, like heavy, like blues or rock, or what you're doing with this kind of punk riot girl aesthetic. I think that is like a really cool way to do it. So like if you build a home studio, I would recommend like try to go with tape.
No, we definitely would. Like we love experimenting with music and sound and things. So no, that's something we definitely want to do. And I think that's why we love the 90s so much, late 80s and 90s. Something
like that lo-fi recording.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, like college radio, like indie radio. Yeah. Like I was all over listening to like the Replacements and Skidoo and like a lot of these bands, you know, like Public Image Limited, you know, all like what Johnny Lydon did after the Sex Pistols. Yeah. There was a lot of cool stuff, you know, the Clash, you know, I mean, Big Audio Dynamite. There was a lot of cool stuff that was being done, and it was raw. And you know, the Clash weren't as raw as they might appear to be. They were actually a little bit more produced, but they still had that punk aesthetic that, that a lot of bands today don't have. You know, you guys got that. You guys like make me hear like the Clash. I hear the Butthole Surfers. I hear L7, and it's really dynamic. I love that. I think there's a lot of bands that are missing out on that because they're overproduced. And it's cool. You guys could have gone that way. You know, it's cool that you didn't go that way.
No, we've already done it. I mean, being signed to the record label, you had no option but to have the most radio-friendly music. I mean, even down to the timing, we were told you can't have a song over this
than 3 minutes or whatever.
And
yeah, so that really frustrating to you when they were limiting like the length of the song, like the key changes, what you could do. Yeah. They were really probably controlling like every aspect, right?
Even radio interviews, we'd have someone from the record label sit in,
and then if you say something wrong, then they like gesture wildly, and you're like, oh, what the fuck did I say?
And then there would be a whole meeting on what you did wrong, and it was just shit. Even if you didn't like a song, it was like, you know what? No, guys, they would tell us that no, you're doing this song, and we'd be like, no, we seriously, what the fuck? Yeah. And we were never allowed to say what we felt. Needed to be said at the time. So, for instance, we're very much staunch supporters of the LGBTQ community, and we would get into shit for it. And I mean, they didn't mind that the like gay market, you know, embraced us. They were just like, no, you can't get too entrenched there. You know, you've got to stick with the mainstream.
Affiliated with them.
And I was like,
that's not cool for people to edit. You know, to me, music is like the ultimate freedom of expression.
Exactly. And you have a limit on
it. Shit. Yeah, you take an artist like yourselves, and then you try to limit your speech it's not consistent with what you're trying to do. You know?
Exactly. And it was shit. I mean, we were much young at the time, and it was a constant struggle. We couldn't do like shows that we wanted to do. It all had to go through the record label, and to a lot of people, being signed is the like biggest thing that you can do as a musician, but it's not actually.
And I also like to mess with people's heads, I think, especially when you're young.
Well, you see, like a lot of bands, they kind of go full circle. You get bands like Pearl Jam, Radiohead, they all went indie. Like Wilco, they all went indie. They were all on labels. They all started to go indie because they want that freedom to do what they want to do.
Exactly.
And if, you know, even the big guys are saying like, I don't want to be controlled like that anymore. You know,
shit.
Yeah, that they want to control. You know, there's a lot of bands now that they even go out and they produce their CDs separately from the label. They'll go and, you know, create packages for vinyl and add posters and stuff that the label doesn't do. They go and create special packages like out, you know, with their own mini companies, you know, and distribute outside the normal distribution just because they want the quality of the product to be better than what the label does.
I mean, even like your fans and people that listen to music, they know integrity and they can feel it. So it's nice, you know, like if your music's on the radio and you're playing like, I don't know, big like TV shows and things like that. Look, that's great and all, but at the end of the day, if you have to answer this question and you can't, when they ask you, so like, you know, what does your music mean to you? Like, how does it make you feel? And you actually feel nothing for it. That's a shit feeling. And we had that.
Yeah.
We'll never do that again.
Yeah, it's cool. So you're totally in control of your destiny. You're doing what you want. You're not being edited. You know, your show that you have total freedom. The way you present yourselves is like a total freedom. It kind of, you know, it's very inspiring because, you know, I do something that's a little different than a lot of artists. Like I create a female persona that's like Josephine Electric, the lead singer of my band, is me.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I actually create her through vocoders. So I use my synthesizers to create a character because I didn't feel comfortable with my own voice.
Okay.
So I went and I was experimenting with vocoders, and I found like if I switched to a soprano mode, my voice turned into this character that I call Josephine Electric, and then I created a whole mythology about her. And you know, some labels, when I was originally doing it, they were like, "Oh, they only like my other character, the Ghost, which is kind of a deep phantom sound. It's like my voice pitch deeper." And I'm like, "Well, Josephine is doing 90% of my songs, or you know, she's the voice I have on most of my music." And I finally found somebody that supported what I was doing, but they were, "Oh, you know, what are you trying to do? You're trying to do transgender, trying to do this, trying to do that." They didn't like it. But you know, you got to be free to do what you want to do, and it's cool when you get people that actually support what you're doing. So I can fully understand what you went through.
Do you know, even the way that we dress, we get a lot of shit for it. I mean, we often perform in body paint and we wear as little as we can get away with. But the crazy thing was, when we were signed to the record label and we were underage, they would put us into magazines like FHM. They even threatened, and I say threatened because it's not a treat for us. They even told us that they would be putting us into Playboy, and we went insane. We hated that. I mean, the reason why we perform and do what we do is because nudity or skin is something so natural, but society has tried to taint it in order to profit from it, and the only way that they make money off skin is by keeping it a taboo. Now, there's nothing wrong with being sexy, but we had a big issue with the fact that the record label didn't mind us in men's magazines or with an overtly sexual image as underage like females. Yet when you as a woman decide to dress how you want, it's a big problem, and we hated that. They took so many issues with the way that we wanted to dress, yet they were putting us into situations that we didn't want to be in, and I hate them.
That's not cool. Because, well, I think it's like, the record industry probably still male dominated with a lot of dumb ideas, and not understanding, being an African American, we run into people that, have a preconceived notion of what an African American artist should do. And so I would think that it's the same kind of thing with female artists, that they have preconceived notions about what they think should work, and they're not talking to you. They're talking at you, trying to, and they're not working with you, trying to like work you.
It's actually so true what you're saying. I completely feel it. I mean, it's annoying. It's like they have an idea of how you should be as a woman, and I guess like what you're saying as an African American, they cannot get beyond their own preconceived idea of who you should be, because that's the only way that they can see you. And that is so shit. And that's why it's so important nowadays for artists, especially, to fight the censorship, fight the bullshit. Because if we don't, and we just keep accepting all the censorship happening, there will be no freedom again. There will never be freedom.
Yeah, well, I like to see, the reason I interview indie artists that are all over the world, because I think they need a platform, and a lot of the big companies, they want to push what they want to push, and I like to push, indie artists that are breaking through and doing something unique. Most of the artists I interview, I've found, and they're doing something really impressive to me. As a music fan and a musician myself, I look at, bands that really interest me, and it doesn't matter what the genre is. I've interviewed country music, EDM, punk rockers, heavy metal guys, anybody that's cool. Whatever the genre you're in, if you're doing something really unique or cool, that's what I want to push. And it's just, to me, the world is trying to force people into this kind of auto-tune, Pro Tools. Like, everybody loves the beat, but the beat's been recycled 1,000 times.
I know, it's shit. Like, if you listen to the radio, there's no distinction between any of the songs. It's like a sameness. And when you ask people, do you like this stuff? Even you ask our brother, he's 18, and you ask the youth, you ask even 12-year-olds, do you like this? People don't really know what to say. They're kind of like, well, yeah, it's all right, but there's no passion in it. I mean, if you look at the 90s, 80s, 70s, even the early 2000s, there was such a distinctive like sound for every genre, and people either loved it, but there was something going on. But now it's all the same. You can't.
Yeah, what the problem? Yeah, what I've seen is, like, I've seen labels say they want a song that sounds like Drake, and they'll say what they want, right?
Yeah.
And so you see all these red labels going around, and they basically are recycling, and they don't want to pay Drake. They'll ask somebody to clone Drake, or they'll ask somebody to clone Beyonce. And they just keep on trying to clone it. And the record industry has done that before, with they've tried to clone the Beatles 1,000 times. They tried to clone Whitney Houston 1,000 times, Beyonce 1,000 times. That's what they do. But if you go back in the day, and you had the original guys in the 60s, the bands that were like jam bands, like the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers, they were allowed to have creative freedom to create things that nobody would write songs like Jessica anymore. because it wouldn't be able to play on the radio. You know, nobody would write a song like Melissa anymore because of like, what's that talking about? You know, they don't let people be creative. They have too many producers trying to do the same thing over and over.
Well, exactly. It's the same with movies and TV. If you look at it, there's no fresh ideas happening.
Yeah, they just want to recycle the same thing over and over.
Same.
And so, yeah, and then it's like if you try to do something new, it's like, what's the market? I said, well, you know, you got to create the market.
Exactly. Yeah. If everyone had that mentality that there is right now, then nothing amazing would have been created. I mean, there's so many limitations now. People are like, oh no.
It's the same when people say, oh, every song that's ever been made or whatever has already been sung. The same when somebody said, I don't know who it was, but they said, oh, everything that's been invented has already been invented. And then a few years later, somebody invented the TV.
I mean, like, I don't know, people are crazy. They'll put so many limitations onto artists, but if they had been this way that they are now to artists like Queen or Madonna, we wouldn't have the music we have nowadays. It's crazy.
Yeah, even going back to Hendrix, Hendrix had to go from like he was doing a Chitlin circuit where he's playing behind the Isley Brothers, playing behind you know, all these soul acts, and he wasn't getting traction. And then some of the soul acts were thinking he was hot dogging it, so they kind of would fire him. And then Chad Chandler from the Animals picked him up and brought him to London.
Yeah.
And then the whole, you know, London elite, you know, McCartney and Lennon and all those guys and Clapton, they saw Hendrix and they were like, oh my God, you know. And then he finally, you know, he had to leave America and then come back. And even then, when he was doing well, like the recording engineers would try to wreck his mix, and he used to have to go on the boards and say no, because he was doing something so innovative that they would try to edit out his feedback. They try to say, "What are you doing?" He's like, he was doing all this stuff that was like really outer space guitar, you know, and it wasn't something that anybody knew how to handle. And he had to be really strong and say, you know, I'm going to go on the board and don't take these sounds out. Don't edit it out. You know, he spent a lot of time doing that, you know.
It's crazy though, when you're the first to do something, when you're a pioneer, you'll get so much shit for it. And it's kind of crazy that years later, people doing what you paved the way for will have such an easy ride and everyone will clap their hands and say, what an amazing job they've done. But they kind of forget the person who started it all, which is pretty shit, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's why I think it's like for every company that's trying to tell people what the mix should be, or, you know, trying to tell you what the key changes should be, or like what you can do in a song. You know, to me, it's like I think the best music is when people do cross genre, and you know, you guys are really all over that. You got Fleetwood Mac, L7, Runaway Sound. You've got
music stuff like that, and there's so much like amazing music out there. And I mean, if you just want to listen to one genre and be arrogant about it, it's actually really sad. So we love the fact that you can't pigeonhole our music. We can play at a hard rock festival. We can play at a pop punk festival. We could play at a, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, there's no limitation on our music, and we prefer it that way.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I like sometimes in electronic music, you know, we get pigeonholed, you know, we get trance and EDM, and then people will say, well, you got to have the drop, you got to have this. And then I've always argued with some electronic musicians and said, you're going to make EDM and trance like disco if you keep on keeping a structure that is so predictable.
Exactly.
That you need to bring in punk elements, jazz elements. Don't be so concerned about the key changes. You know, be like progressive music. Think like Yes. You know, think like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Electronic music is supposed to be wide open, where you could mix in classical, you could have punk, you could have rock, you could do key changes. You shouldn't be stuck to the drop. You shouldn't be stuck to that beat that is EDM. And I understand, well, that's the genre, but you're going to kill the genre.
Exactly.
If you don't,
that's the problem.
If you don't go beyond it.
they don't ever get innovative anymore. People get lazy and they don't think for themselves. And it's kind of the same with politics as well, I guess. People have become so used to accepting shit that they no longer question it. And it's the same with years ago, like Pink Floyd. I mean, they were making music that no one else did or dared to do. And if they had thought to themselves, oh no, this won't get airplay or we can't do this,
they wouldn't have made it.
It wouldn't have made it, and we would have so much less amazing music out there.
Yeah, the whole idea, like the art rock, you know, progressive rock, they would do songs that are like more than 6 minutes long, you know, and they do, you know, like rock operas, kind of like Tommy, like Pink Floyd was doing like Tommy Quadrophenia, like rock operas.
That's
like The Wall. Yeah, there's like Animals. I mean, Animals is like a rock opera. It's very like that album is amazing. I just love it because they tell a story. And
Hotel California also.
Yeah. I mean, because you get bands that do these songs like Bohemian Rhapsody and Hotel California. According to the radio guys, those songs shouldn't have worked because they were over 3 minutes.
Yeah, if you stick to a formula, then all you'll ever get is what you already know and what's already out there. And that's scary because people are so afraid of taking the risk of, I don't know, maybe rejection. But what they need to understand is so many people like the same music, but there are so many people craving something new. And if you can give people something that they haven't heard before, you've already created a new market, a new genre, a new way of thinking for people, which is great.
That's why I think like having social media like Instagram and, you know, and SoundCloud and the Facebook and the YouTube allows a lot of indie musicians, because like every musician I've interviewed, I've found them on Instagram or I found them on YouTube. And I didn't find them in the traditional places that, you know, the record labels like to push people. But, you know, it seems like that's where a lot of the real goings on are happening. Kind of like college radio used to be the bed where you'd find like an REM, where you'd find like a Hooch Skidoo, because it was like a college radio station would play it, and then you're like, wow. And that's where I would listen to like all my music back in the 80s was right off of the college radio. I wouldn't listen to the top 40. I was listening to that to find all the cool bands. And I think that's what's going on today. And then the labels will try to like grab a band off of YouTube or grab them off of SoundCloud or Instagram. But the fact is, like, a lot of bands are doing really good work in this kind of underground, you know, arena that's out there in social media. And I think that's where all the energy is, you know.
Well, independent artists have so many more platforms now. I mean, a lot of people think a record label is the end all, but it's not. You can do so much more for yourself. You are very interactive with people out there. You'll find like-minded individuals who'll gravitate to what you're doing. And that's the most important thing you can do right now, is to get your name out, get out there, connect. And a lot of people are lazy, I guess, and they won't do it.
Yeah, that's why I found this podcast, because I was on SoundCloud, you know, as a SoundCloud electronic artist, and then the company approached me because they saw I had like 80,000 listens, you know, for what I was doing. And then they said, you know, would you want to come on and do a podcast? So initially I was just talking about my own music. Then I said, you know what, I need to interview bands because I love music. So I just started going, anybody that would like my approach was, I put something on Instagram. If an artist would like my Instagram, then I would approach them and say, hey, I got a podcast. Since you like my song, would you want to come on and talk? And that's been my approach. And I've been able to interview over 30 artists in the last 2 years.
That's cool.
And I do it because I don't charge people, because there are people out there that will say, oh, you got to pay to get interviewed. And my whole thing is like, I love music, and I do this because I'm a musician, and I think other musicians would want to be interviewed. And so I come at it from that perspective. And then without even thinking about it, I started getting sponsors. You know, I mean, I wasn't trying to make money, but because I was just doing it because I wanted to do it, now it's starting to actually, you know, work. And I've got over 17,000 listeners on this podcast. And now we're Anchor is actually part of Spotify. And then we're on like 11 different platforms. So this goes out to like Apple, Google, Radio Public, Stitcher. So this podcast goes out on 11 platforms. when I publish it, so it gets artists a way to get their voice and their concepts heard. That's what I like to do.
Oh, it's really amazing, and I respect that. I mean, I think the fact that you're an artist yourself helps you to like understand what you would want, so you know exactly how to treat other musicians, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I found. Like, and I don't want to get into your social life. I want to talk about your music. I want to talk about where your influences are. And so, like, when your new album comes out, what we've been doing is we've done a couple of shows, like Kendra Black out of New York. We introduced her album, and we actually talked every single song. We, like, when she put out her new album, The Fire, we went through every song, and we talked about it. And then with a band called Sex with Roller Coasters out of Philadelphia, they're kind of a punk indie band. We just talked about their latest release, and we went song by song. So, like, with you guys, when you have your new album ready, we could go song by song, or we could even do another episode where we take one of your other albums and go song by song. But I just wanted to kind of do an introductory episode. I've done like multiple episodes with certain individuals that they have enough stuff to talk about. So
fucking cool.
So if you're into that, we could arrange that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every one of our albums has evolved so much. The first album we did was very raw. We recorded it in 2 days, 16 songs, because we had nothing from when we were in South Africa. We had nothing to take with on tour, and we were about to head out to England for the first time. And we needed like something, so we did 16 songs in 2 days. It was fucking crazy. I don't know how we did it. And then we flew to England, no idea of anything, and we went from there. So that album's very raw. A lot of our songs are anti-political. They're always about things that we've been through and what we feel. Even one of the songs on our first album is about an armed robbery we happened to be part of. We weren't part of it. We weren't part of it, but we were like unwittingly like
involved in it. Like
wow.
We were in got robbed.
Yeah, it was pretty fucked up. But then we've got the second album, and it's a bit not polished, but it's a bit we had more time on it, so it's not as raw. But again, the songs mean so fucking much to us. And the third album is just a complete like evolution, you would say, of music.
So when you talk about evolution, have you introduced any other types of instruments? Or are you still primarily guitar focused?
No, bass, guitar, and vocals and drums. But we get very experimental, like with sounds and things, and maybe like some of the songs are maybe the kind of songs that people wouldn't have expected us to do, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
Everything's still guitar focused, but you run through maybe effects or different studio tricks to make it interesting or different dynamics.
Just different guitar sounds that we experimented with,
and even like vocal arrangements,
and
like weird harmonies or
different harmonies, and it's pretty.
Okay, so more overdubbing. Like, is it more tracked?
Like
just maybe more layers. Yeah.
Like
more layers. Yeah. So you have more layered tracks on top of each other to experiment with.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have a home studio, and I use like 24 track recorders.
Holy shit.
I don't use a DAW, and I just let my Moogs and my analog synths. I build them like track by track. And then when I perform, I'm a solo performer, but I use foot pedals and all kinds of stuff to do like a live jam band kind of progressive. My heroes were like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Yes, and Tony Banks from Genesis. And so I kind of bring to the stage, instead of like electronic musician that's on a CDJ, I got a big stack of keyboards.
Oh, that's so cool.
And like modulars. Yeah. And I just come out and I just play them kind of organically like a jam band,
Fucking cool. Have you ever played an organ live?
I've played like simulated organs on my synth. I use synths that can basically become organs. So I use Roland synths and like Prophet synths and Moogs, and so I can generate organ like Hammond B3 sounds off of my stuff, and play it. And I play it because I'm a keyboardist. So unlike a lot of electronic musicians, they're just CDJ in it. I'm actually physically playing, and so that seems to be like, I've had trouble with some venues. They're like, oh, can you just bring your SD cards? Like, no, I'm bringing my road case.
Fuck's sake.
And I'm bringing my Juno, and I'm bringing my Moog, and they're like, well, we don't have room for that. Like, how can you have a venue that says they want musicians and you don't have room for a keyboardist to bring his boards?
But you see, that's the problem. A lot of people as well, they rely only on like backtracks. Nothing's live. And it's, again, live shows will start to be a lost art if people continue in this way. It's great to rely on technology to a degree, and it's great to use it, but you can't rely exclusively on it. You still have to maintain, like, you know, some like creative control on actually doing like a sound. You can't.
Well, even being a musician, I mean, you guys are guitar players, bassists and guitar players. You guys have to play, you know? So you have to do a sound check. You got to play, you know, you got to have amps. You got to really do it. And then we, a lot of bands are just using sequencers or using Ableton, you know, using MPCs. And that's, you know, it's fine for a rapper. I understand hip hop. You can be creative and stuff with that, but you can overdo it, where you're basically lip syncing to your own music.
You know, we've seen so many bands.
Yeah, that's not cool. Yeah, that's not cool.
So many bands, like, we'll be at a venue and it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you insane? Like, it's not that they don't have enough musicians in the band to play. It's just, I don't know, for some reason they've tried so hard to chase perfection that they're almost too scared of actually playing live without a backtrack, because they can't recreate all the trickery they've done in the studio. And you just think to yourself, my God, what the fuck is this? It's insane.
Yeah.
It's an insult.
Yeah, because I mean, my hero, I would go see the Allman Brothers. I'd go see the Dead.
Yeah.
And part of the feel was the Allman Brothers are gonna play that song different every night, you know, and it would still be like, they don't need a backing track, and they know the song, and then they would change it. And to me, live playing is about that. Yeah, I'm gonna be within the ballpark of that song, but if I want to change it up and do it a little different, a different key, or if I want to add a different solo, I'm not going to be so upset that I didn't get the solo exactly as it is on the vinyl, or exactly as it is. I'm going to go and have fun with it. And to me, you take the fun out of being a musician if you're telling me I got to play that song exactly the same every night. That's kind of like mind numbing.
Oh, shit. But I mean, that's crazy that people will forgo like experimentation and freedom in music for, I don't know, perfect, like a clinical, clean cut sound every single time, and you just wonder why.
And take that, like the real passion, I think.
Well, you take the passion out of it. I mean, the whole thing about, you know, you get back to Hendrix. Hendrix would do. There's so many different versions of Purple Rain. You know, I mean, not Purple Rain, but Purple Haze. He would come out but Purple Haze. I mean, but if you get into like Voodoo Child, there's so many different variations he would do. Yeah. And the whole core, seeing a guy like a Hendrix or Dwayne Allman or Clapton or Jimmy Page, the fact is that they would change it, and there's a reason to go get different live performances of bands like Zepp and Hendrix and Clapton and Cream and all these bands, to go and find the live performances, because the way it was actually why you want to see a live act is because they actually have certain nights where they kick it a different way.
Yeah.
And that is actually the draw. The draw shouldn't be that they're going to play it exactly as you hear it on the top 40.
Yeah, but I think so many people now, from like being fed, I don't know, this fake, like, perfect every single time, it's like so clinically done, and they just expect that. And I mean, if you changed it up a bit, they wouldn't know what to do. They would freak out. So I think it's when people appreciate a live band as opposed to just loving a perfect CD.
Yeah, but I think there's a different set of audiences now. Like when I go play in New York or I play in Boston, I go to places that want to hear live music from live musicians. And there's certain venues that are like, oh, you know, if you're a DJ, you got to use vinyl. Or if you're a band, you got to actually be a band. And you can't be like using sequencers for 90% of what you're doing. You got to play it. So there are people that are kind of having a backlash to what is going on. You know, and it's probably not as big an audience as what is in the big venues. But, you know, I'd rather be in a 300 seat venue or 500 seat venue playing what I want to do. than to being forced to doing that other stuff.
Exactly. At the end of the day, when you think about it, it's all fine and well to have this image of, like, I don't know, massive success. I mean, your songs on the radio and you're playing these big venues, but if you don't even believe in what you're doing yourself, what's the point?
Yeah, I think it's like, to me, if you believe in what you're doing and you put all your heart into it, people find you. You know, like I've been able to put out what I wanted, and then, you know, some people came to me and they started distributing my stuff, and I started getting opportunities to do like what I'm doing right now, because I just was true to what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to become anybody else. I mean, I was inspired by other people, like, you know, like I said, like, you know, Tony Banks and Keith Emerson, and you know, all the guys from Yes, Rick Wakeman,
Yeah,
guys who actually played, that studied, that practiced, that, you know, that can explain to you, you know, what they're doing in their music, you know, and you want to read their interviews, and you want to go look at what they did in the past and kind of like build on it. And that's to me is like the whole tradition of music, is you want to push yourself.
no, exactly. You have to live for what you do. And I think so many people, they get into it for the wrong reasons, and they do. It's the same with art. If an artist creates art for what they think people want to see,
And it's not really art.
It's basically just rehashing the same old shit. So if you create something and it's completely from you, and you don't have any expectation in mind, and you don't have an outcome in mind, it's a great thing. I mean,
because it's honest, like
it's free.
real.
Yeah, that's what I believe, and you know, that's why I have this forum to like let people talk about what they want to talk about. But I think, yeah, I'm gonna have to cut it short because there's some other things. But what's gonna happen is that, you know, the segment we just did that kind of got cut off, that's gonna get strung together.
Okay.
And we're gonna publish this within an hour or two. It'll go out to Anchor FM, which is the primary place, but then it'll be on Spotify. I'm able to do like a highlight link that will allow you to, like, in Instagram, click on the highlight and it will go right to the Spotify podcast. So to have this connection between Instagram and Spotify, which is cool. And then what's cool is also the hyperlinks are active on the podcast. So if I put your website or your Spotify link into the physical description of the episode, it's actually clickable and will go to your site, which is pretty cool.
That's cool. Sweet.
Yeah, so I will send you, as it gets published, all the links, and you can push them out wherever you want. There's no charge. We do have sponsors that you might hear in between the segments, but that's how we get paid.
Well, that's cool.
But yeah, so it's cool. So yeah, we're glad to talk to you guys. It's awesome. You guys are kicking ass.
Well, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity, and also you rock as well. We really respect what you do.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So yeah, when your album comes out and you want to do an album episode, if you want to go back and talk about your last album, we could arrange another episode.
Yeah,
just let me know. Okay, well, great. Keep on kicking ass, and you guys are awesome. And I'm going to be pushing you all on my social media. I've got a Twitter.
Thank you. We really appreciate it, because this is all we've got. It's what we live for. So thank you.
Yeah, I love you guys. You guys are awesome.
So. Thank you. Well, much love and respect back at you too.
Okay, thank you for being on. This was the SoapGirls, and you support them. We go to their website, get all their music, download it, share it, buy their merch, go to their shows. That's how you support an artist.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.